All right, next, let's look at example 3. Here, we are going to look at how to get an object out of an optional, and then we're going to look at the conditional methods that come with the optional class, like if present or else, or else get, or else throws. All right, so example 3, we're going to start by getting the object from an optional. So we, again, will take that string from our previous example. So we have our string onion, and we have our optional string, populated string optional from onion. Now, how do we get the string back out of our optional variable here? To do that, we can do an assertion. So we can assert that our populated string dot get. So the dot get method here returns us the value, the object value, if it is present. So if we have a object in our optional that is present, we can use get to return that object. So get will return us onion. So we have get. So let's verify that. So if we're getting back this onion object, we should be able to do is equal to. Is equal to, and it should be the same as onion. All right, so we created our string object, onion. We converted string to an optional called populated string optional. And we're using the get method to get our string back out of our optional and then make sure that it is equal to the string that we converted it to. So if I save this and run, everything passes. Okay, now let's look at the next option. All right, so 2, let's look at null checks versus optionals if present. So in the old days, or the old way of doing this, in order for us to check to see if onion is null, we need to start with the traditional if onion not equal to null, then do something. And in this case, let's just print out the length of onion. And onion dot length. All right, so if I run this, I should get 5. And I get 5. All right, so we confirm that onion is not null. However, if we want to use optionals, we no longer have to do this null check. We can actually use the optional object to simplify this logic. So here we can start with our populated string. So this is the optional string we created and converted from string onion. So we start out with the populated string optional. We start with is present. If it's present, it'll return true. That means we can do something with it. And then I can use lambdas to actually pull out the value. So, all right, so if it's present, I can then get the object inside of optional. So I can do topping. So this will take the optional value. So it will return me the string as topping. And then we can do the same logic here. But in this case, we want topping. Oh, not is present, if present, sorry. So if I want to do the same logic without having to do this if check, all I have to do for readability is take my optional, if present, pull out the optional value as topping, and then system out print line the topping length. Flows much easier to read, and avoids all these if statements all over the place in our code. So if I run this, they should be the same. And I get 5 and 5. So this is how you do a null check with optional using if present. All right, so 3. Let's look at the Java 9 introduction of if present or else. So this now allows us to do an if else within the optional chaining with using our method chaining. So here we're going to start out with our populated string again. Copy this. All right, so we have our populated string. If present, write out the length. All right, well, that doesn't really tell me much. So let me change this just so we can, for clarity. So topping chosen plus, and now we can actually get the value. So I will just name this value. So I'm getting the value of my string, and we're writing out the value. However, if you change this from if present to if present or else, so if present or else takes 2 options or 2 parameters. So we get a runnable empty action or we have an action, and these allow us to create internal functions to override these values. So the first one we did was value of, or value, and then the second one, comma, is going to be an empty because we don't have a value. And no toppings. So now, if I use if present or else, if I have a value, do something. Otherwise, do something else. So I can actually write that logic within the method chaining. So now if I run this, I should get toppings chosen. I do. Next, let's look at use or else to override nulls. So let's create a no toppings string of null. And if we do an or else, we can create a string topping equals optional dot of nullable, no toppings, dot or else cheese. Now here, we're going to pass in a null optional. However, if it is null, we want to return cheese. So we're essentially sending a default value here. So to verify that, we can do assert that topping dot is equal to cheese. So let's run this. And we pass. So if we have no toppings, if our object that we're converting to optional is null, we're going to set the value to cheese. All right, now let's look at use or else get. So here, we're going to take topping again. So we'll just take our string topping, and we're going to take an optional of nullable, and we're going to pass in no toppings. So we're going to do no toppings again. Now, this time, we're going to do or else, but we're going to use the functional interface. So we're going to use or else get. So If it's nullable, we can do or else, which sets the value, or we can do or else get, which takes, if a value is present, return the value. Otherwise, it returns the result produced by a supplying function. So we have to create an overriding function inside of an or else get. So in or else get, we start here, we create an open function because we aren't pulling anything in, because if it's null, we don't have a value. And then we can set the value this way. So you can use or else, or you can do an or else and do some type of calculation or function to return your default value. All right, so here we should get pepperoni. So we assert that. And we should get pepperoni, not cheese. Okay, run this again. We pass. Excellent. All right, now let's look at or else throw. Sometimes our calculations may throw an exception. So we know we're going to get an exception. So we have that nullable option that we had. We can assert that an exception of type, in this case, we're going to use the legal argument exception. So we can use the or else throw to throw a specific type of exception. In this case, we're going to throw an illegal argument exception. We're going to use the is thrown by, which takes a function. All right, so this is all assert.j stuff. Now we're going to take our optional of nullable, and we could just pass null, but I'm just going to do no toppings. So we're going to pass in a null string. So no toppings, or else throw, and we can pass in an illegal argument exception, new. So here, if we do optional of nullable with a nullable object, we can use or else throw illegal argument exception. So if we get a null, throw this exception. Run this again. And we pass. All right, now, this was the old way of doing things. We had to actually handle the exceptions if we wanted to. With Java 10, they introduced a simplified or else throw method. So they basically overrode the method. So we can start again with optional dot of nullable. Again, we'll take in our null optional. However, in this case, all I have to do is or else throw. This will return us a no such element exception. Much more simplified. So now all I have to do is take all this, take our assertion logic, and then wrap it. So we want to assert that exception of type no such element exception is thrown by optional of nullable type or else throw. So if we get null, we will throw no such element exception. And we passed. All right, so let's review this one real quick. So for example 3, we want to get an object from an optional. So we create an optional, and then we want to get the object value out of the optional. So to do that, we use the get method. If we wanted to check to make sure that the value is null, before we try to get it, we can use the if present. So we no longer have to do the object not equal to null. We can just do optional if present, then get the value and use it within a function. We can use if present or else to override the value, basically setting a default value. Using if present or else, we can use the or else to override nulls. So if we have an optional of nullable, we can use or else to return the default value. We can use or else get to override nulls using a functional interface. So we can use or else get, and we can supplement a empty function call and then do some documentation afterwards to do something for the return of our optional or of our object. Again, useful for setting default values. We also looked at or else throws, which was the original or else throw to handle exceptions thrown by our optionals. But Java 10 gave us a simpler method where instead of us having to actually create a functional interface, we just need to use or else throws to now return no such element exception.